Okay, welcome to U.S. History 5-minute review on George Washington's administration. Remember the Prezi up here that you see, you can always click on that and kind of follow it along. It will go more in depth than what we're going to be discussing, but it's a good review for you. Okay, let's talk about George Washington's administration. When George Washington comes in, he has a lot of issues that he's having to deal with becoming president for the very first time. And some of those will include some difficulties between two political parties. You have trying to build bridges back with Great Britain and with France. You also have the issue of what precedents will he set? How will he build this new executive branch? How will he bring it together to be functional and effective for the federal government? Okay, and here's some of the things that he will do. The first thing, he will create the first cabinet. Okay, you have Edmund Randolph, Attorney General. You have Henry Knox, Secretary of War. You have Thomas Jefferson, Secretary of State, and you have Alexander Hamilton, Secretary of Treasury. Okay, remember we talked about in depth the two men, Jefferson and Hamilton, will very much be at odds with each other. You have Jefferson, the Democratic Republican, who is favoring strict interpretation of the Constitution, favoring state government power, state power. Favoring the French, favoring the common man, agricultural class, where Hamilton, on the other hand, is favoring the merchant class, loose interpretation of the Constitution, tariffs, the National Bank, a lot of things that Jefferson will be very adamantly against. So therefore, these two men will butt heads constantly at cabinet meetings with George Washington, so he sees how political parties can be a huge problem. Now, with Alexander Hamilton, he will create this economic plan, financial plan that he will present to Washington. A lot of these things will go through. The things that will go through, the main things you need to know, that the national government will assume debts of the state. Now, with this, you got to keep in mind, a lot of states didn't want to necessarily do this, particularly in the South. So in order to get them to buy into assuming the debts of the states, those debts from the American Revolution that need to be paid off, Hamilton will offer the South Washington, D.C. The capital will be moved closer to them from New York City to Washington, D.C. and built there. Washington will not serve there. Adams will be the first president there, and Jefferson the first president to take his oath of office there, but it will create Washington, D.C. The second thing you need to know will be tariff. A tariff will be placed on imports coming in from other nations to boost American manufacturing and industry. The third thing will be the National Bank. The National Bank will be 80% funded privately with wealthy investors. That's really going to upset Jefferson. 20% publicly, and the way to raise money for the National Bank will be the excise tax, 25% excise tax on whiskey. And what does that start? Yes, you guessed it, the Whiskey Rebellion. Okay, the Whiskey Rebellion will be in Pennsylvania. Washington is able to come in and successfully put the rebellion down, which is a huge difference from Shays' Rebellion that we talked about before. Shays' Rebellion, the Articles of Confederation were unable to put the rebellion down successfully, and therefore it showed the weaknesses of the Articles and caused the Constitution to come about. Okay, so that's a big win for George Washington's administration there. Jay's Treaty. This will get the British out of the forts of the Old Northwest, okay? Now keep in mind, they were still there because the United States government, the Articles of Confederation, and eventually the United States government under Washington, did not allow land to be given back, confiscated land to be given back to the Loyalists after the American Revolutionary War. So they make this treaty in order to get them out of the forts of the Old Northwest. The next treaty is Pinckney's Treaty. Pinckney's Treaty is with Spain. It lowers the border with Florida to the 31st parallel. We will get access to the Mississippi River, land all the way to the Mississippi River, and access to the Port of New Orleans. The Mississippi River and Port of New Orleans are very key because that's going to help our industry, that's going to help our trade routes to make it easier to get goods from one place to another. And finally, Washington's farewell address. He will warn against two things. One, political parties. Think about what he dealt with Hamilton and Jefferson. And two, entangling alliances. How is he and the United States or future presidents going to be able to really get involved in foreign affairs while still dealing with things at home? At what point can we get out of this neutrality? Remember the Proclamation of Neutrality as well when you're thinking about foreign policy by Washington. Okay, and finally, I'm going to leave you here with a video, Lynn Manuel's rap about Alexander Hamilton, just to kind of sum up his life and leading us into, Jefferson's administration is really when this happens, and, into his second term of office, and that will kind of give you a little taste of what's to come. Thanks.